Hello, and welcome to another episode of Space Marine Legions Explained. This one I am personally very excited to talk about, as it is arguably the most unique Space Marine Legion. It is, of course, the Night Lords. 8th Legiones Astartes, the Night Lords. The 8th Legion was a force that shaped cruelty and fear into a weapon. It was known foremost for its disproportionate and merciless application of force. Its first blow, an atrocity pitched with such wanton brutality that it forced entire populations into abject surrender and desperation to avoid suffering the same fate. For foes who refused to capitulate, the Night Lords reserved a singular talent for murder. Its warriors were a grim function of necessity, a terrifying force of monsters created to drag a barbaric age into the light. However, such monsters would not long stay leashed to the Imperium. In its final days, the Legion would become an undisciplined mob that came to see cruelty as its goal and not the means to a worthy end. It was no longer a precise weapon of war, but an indiscriminate scourge, as was fitting for a legion of such ill repute and terrible mien. It would not go meekly to meet the fate, nor accept without bloodshed an end to the path it had chosen to walk. Amid the turmoil and destruction of the Horus heresy, the Legion would turn upon itself in an orgy of violence in an effort to sever itself from a singular curse, its own Primarch. Primogenitor Conrad Kurz, the Night Haunter. Cognomen, Prior, non-recognized. Informally, the Night's Children, the Terror. Observed strategic tendencies, punitive actions, decimation, enforced pacification, terror assaults, psychological warfare. Noteworthy domains, Nostromo, destroyed. Taguelsa. Allegiance, Traitoris, Perdita. Heart of Darkness. The 8th Legion was soaked in blood from its very birth. The Legion's first recruit came from the prison sinks of terror, vast underground caverns where generations of transgressors struggled in blind darkness. Strength, ruthlessness, cunning, and cruelty were vital to survival in the lightless warrens, qualities which paired perfectly with the Legion's gene seed. This gene strain gave the sons of the underworld the ability to see through darkness to a degree far exceeded that of other legions. This gift was also a curse, forcing them to see the light of suns through flare buffers. Even though they now stood in the world above, the warriors of the 8th Legion still walked in the night. The warriors of the Legion were creatures made to live in the dark, and to fight a war for a future of light. At their core, they were creating a future without creatures of their kind. During the Great Crusade, the 8th Legion was used to bring to heel those who believed that the sins of the past could not live on in the Imperium. The warriors of the 8th Legion tended towards moral absolutism, in which there were no degree of guilt, and they meted out only retribution. Their cold justice brought light to the darkness in which monsters dwelt. And as this light of the illumination swept across the galaxy, it became increasingly obvious that there would be soon no dark realm left for the Legion itself. Lords of the Night. Conrad Kurz was the Dark King of his Night Lords. He maintained a court of his most useful sons, named the Chiroptera. Its members, officers from across the Legion. They were the ruling elite of the Night Lords, and, alongside them, served the Atramenta, a formation equipped with Terminator armor. Within its ranks were the Contekar, haughty true aristocrat sons of Nostromo, who vied for power and were willing to take any murderous measure to earn a seat on the Chiroptera. This Terminator host was the coldly brutal personal command of the first captain of the Night Lords, Jaego Savatarian, and they were his enforcers of order within the Legion. Beneath the Chiroptera were the companies, malleable in size and in authority, with inconsistent ranks for their captains, such as Commander, Master, and Regent. Violent rivalry was endemic and command structures fluid as a result. Officers and squads were fiercely individual, bearing monikers to set them apart from each other. These titles had echoes in the nobility and gangs of Nostromo, such as Talonmaster or the Bloodless. Many were insults that either stuck or were adopted by their bearers out of perversity. Almost all squads within the Legion had a name that they used in place of a designation, so that squads within a company might be referred to as Claws, Talons, or a number of other epithets. This complexity masked a surprisingly efficient and flexible approach to warfare, which allowed the Legion to operate with a high degree of fluidity, and to be readily fractured into autonomous units or combined into an ad hoc formation as their masters dictated. The Night Lords followed the Principe Bellicosa, albeit with a lower proportion of breaching or siege-configured formations. They also had a number of unique units, the infamous Terror Squads, whose sole purpose was to instill a state of horror into their enemies, and the Night Raptors, who would soar above their enemies, trailing the bloody remains of their kills. Emblems of terror were a mark of pride within the Legion, and they embellished their weapons with grotesque craftsmanship. Furthermore, they habitually adorned their armor and vehicles with mutilated trophies, and made an art of flaying and displaying the dead in order to sow fear among their foes, or else lit their armor with brooding displays of lightning. There was method in this madness, at least at first. Such grisly displays were a clear signal to their foes saying, "This fate will be yours to share." The Night Lords were naturally rebellious given their feral origins, and as of the Age of Darkness progressed, Curse descended into insanity, abandoning his sons and causing his legion to fracture and fight its own private rebellion of sullen fratricide. Some within the Legion relished the freedom given to them by the failure of Curse, regressing to a collection of disparate warbands, whilst others retained the brutal honour that had once been the heart of the Legion, cleaved to the War Master's cause. The Primarch, Conrad Curse. Many Primarchs displayed some degree of psychic talent, but for Conrad Curse, it was not a gift, but a curse. For he saw only the darkest of patterns and arguaries of the future. This was not the subtle reading of cause and consequence, but the unkind touch of prophecy. He would see glimpses on the horizon of a grim future, plunging into terrible dreams and waking visions. He would see only fatalistic outcomes of the death and failure of his brothers and his sons. Wreathed in flame and blood, he saw his own death and knew that it would be at the hand of his father. This accursed knowledge he kept secret to himself, turning him taciturn and paranoid. As a result, he walked a lonely path towards his own doom with the determination of the gallows and a black, cracked, and uncaring humour. The Primarch was found on Nostromo, a sunless world of suffering, pain, and corruption devoid of hope and racked by the violence of criminal syndicates. Curse was a broken product of this world. There the young Primarch was alone. He feasted on vermin and the corpses of the murdered, and his sanity dwindled to nothing. On this world of criminals, he was a killer who refused to become a corrupted king, instead choosing a path of righteousness. Surrounded by sin, he lashed out and made gruesome displays of justice, becoming a thing of terror to cow the gangs of Nostromo into order. And in their fear, and partly in hope of an avenging angel of blind justice, the people of that world named him the Night Haunter. He mutilated and butchered until the streets of Nostromo fell quiet, and the world bowed to his perverse law. When reunited with the Emperor, Kurz accepted his role in the Imperium as a premonition of doom. Kurz changed his legionaries little, other than naming them the Lords of the Night, though they did adopt from Nostromo its language and its gutter scum sons as recruits. Their ways and methods of war changed not at all, and the integration of Terran and Nostromo warriors was amongst the swiftest of any legion. The old legion and the new fitted together like two sides of a coin, both raised from darkness to create order in strife. Both raised from darkness to create order in strife. Both made of flesh born in shunned and lightless places. The Nighthaughter did not inspire his warriors to new heights of nobility. Rather, his return saw their righteous drive to punish intensify. Together they brought atrocity after atrocity to non-compliant human worlds. The Legion was bound to its new master out of fear as much as adoration, and some legionaries hated him for being so like unto themselves, and not beautiful or glorious as other Primarchs were. Kurz cared not how they saw him, so long as they obeyed. The character of the 8th Legion grew to include a dark and cruel sense of humour, and a snide fatalism with their father leading them. New traditions, twisted reflections of Nostroman gang rights and customs were adopted within the Legion, such as marking condemned legionaries' gauntlets red to show that a death sentence hung over them. The honorific titles sported by many of the Legion's officers started to take on the form of those of the cruel Nostroman courts. The reuniting of Primarch and Legion was the beginning of a spiral that would only see the Night Lords descend further into horror and nihilism. A century after leaving Nostromo to join the Great Crusade, short years before the outbreak of the Horus Heresy, Kurz and his Legion would return to their sanctuary amid a series of dishonorable reversals for the Night Lords. There, Kurz found the world that he had raised from barbarity had fallen back into criminality, and those he had trusted to lead in his absence had succumbed to greed, corruption, and recidivism. Kurz's judgment was simple and swift. The Night Lords destroyed Nostromo. As his world died, Kurz retreated into his own soul, removing himself from his Nostroman sons, whom he now despised. With this act of finality, the Night Lords lost their tether to restraint and morality. They became not necessary monsters, but simply monsters. This has been the Night Lords of the Great Crusade. Thank you for watching.